My name is Laura Bennett. I am 34 years old, and I have spent most of my adult life building a career that I am deeply proud of. I worked my way up from an entry-level assistant in a corporate office to a respected project manager in a firm that values my dedication and skill. But what should have been a life of balance and partnership with my husband quickly spiraled into a nightmare when his parents began to see me not as a person with dreams and goals, but as nothing more than a caretaker for their future grandchildren. It all began not long after I married my husband, Daniel. I had always known his parents were a bit traditional, but I thought it was harmless. They made subtle comments during our engagement about how a woman's place is in the home, but Daniel reassured me not to take it seriously. "They're old-fashioned," he said, laughing it off. "They'll come around when they see how happy we are." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love was enough to smooth out the cracks. But once the wedding excitement settled, the pressure started. It began with gentle hints at family gatherings, his mother asking, "So, when are you giving us grandbabies?" While his father chuckled, "Don't wait too long, Laura, you don't want to miss your window." I smiled politely, brushing it off. I wasn't ready. Daniel and I had talked about waiting a few years before starting a family. We both wanted to be stable financially and emotionally. Or at least, I thought we had agreed. The first real blow came during a Sunday dinner at their house. His mother served the roast chicken, placed the dishes down with a flourish, and then looked me dead in the eyes as she said, "Daniel told us you've been working late again. You really should slow down, dear. Once you have children, you won't have time for all this career nonsense." I nearly choked on my water. I laughed nervously, thinking she must be joking, but her face was serious. I glanced at Daniel, expecting him to defend me. To say, "Mom, stop. Laura's career is important." Instead, he looked away, fiddling with his fork. That silence cut deeper than any words could. As months passed, their comments escalated from hints to demands. His father pulled Daniel aside after dinner one evening, but his voice was loud enough for me to hear. "Your wife needs to understand her responsibility. Raising children is a full-time job. She can't be running off to an office while you're out working." I sat frozen, cheeks burning, waiting for Daniel to say something, anything. But again, he stayed quiet. The final straw came one evening when his parents invited us over under the pretense of discussing the future. I should have known it was a trap. We sat in their living room, the curtains drawn, the air heavy. His mother clasped her hands together, her eyes full of feigned sweetness. "Laura," she began, "Daniel will be busy building his career. It is only right that you quit your job once you have children. They need a mother at home, not a stranger raising them." I felt my chest tighten. "With all due respect," I said carefully, "I love my work. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I don't intend to throw that away." His father's voice boomed like thunder. "Selfish. That's what you are. Thinking of yourself instead of family. If you loved Daniel, if you loved us, you would understand that your career doesn't matter compared to raising his children." The words hung in the air like poison. I looked at Daniel, pleading with my eyes, begging him to speak. But he sat silently, his shoulders slumped, avoiding my gaze. It was as if he had already surrendered to their will. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. The walls of our bedroom felt like they were closing in. My mind replayed every sacrifice I had made, every late night at the office, every promotion I had fought tooth and nail for, every dream I had carved out for myself. And now, because of their outdated expectations, I was expected to give it all up, to erase myself so I could live for everyone else. I realized in that moment that I was standing at a crossroads. Either I could bend to their demands and lose myself entirely, or I could take control of my own life, no matter the cost. And that was when the thought entered my mind. Maybe it was time to pack my bags. After that night at my in-laws' house, something inside me shifted. I couldn't unhear the way they dismissed my career, as if it were nothing more than a hobby. As if the years I spent clawing my way up the corporate ladder meant absolutely nothing. But what hurt me the most wasn't their words, it was Daniel's silence. He didn't defend me. He didn't speak up. He just sat there, shrinking into himself, and by doing so, he told me exactly where I stood. The next morning, I tried to bring it up with him. We were sitting at the kitchen table, coffee cups in hand, sunlight streaming weakly through the curtains. My heart pounded as I said, "Daniel, last night was too much. Your parents can't keep dictating how I live my life. I've worked too hard to give up my career." He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples like I was already exhausting him. "Laura, you're overreacting. They just want what's best for us, for the family. For their version of family," I snapped. "Not ours. We talked about this before we got married, Daniel. You said you respected my career. You promised me." He shifted uncomfortably. "I do respect it, but things change. Having kids is different. My mom's right, raising children is a full-time job. You can't do both." The words stung like acid. I set my coffee down with a sharp clink. "You mean I can't do both? But you get to? You get to keep your career, your goals, your freedom, while I give up everything? Why is my life the one that has to shrink?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the table, his silence louder than any argument. Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted. His mother started dropping by unannounced, bringing casseroles and nursery catalogs, leaving them conspicuously on the counter. "Just a little inspiration," she said with a smile that felt more like a threat. His father cornered me in the driveway one evening when I came home from work late, shaking his head in disapproval. "This can't go on forever, Laura. You're married now. Your duty is clear." I began to feel like a stranger in my own home. Every conversation with Daniel ended in tension. Every family gathering felt like walking into an ambush. My career, the thing I had worked so tirelessly for, was becoming a point of resentment. Daniel complained when I worked late, even though he had once admired my dedication. "My mom says you're always at the office," he muttered one night. "Maybe she's right. Maybe you're not prioritizing us." That sentence nearly broke me. I had sacrificed so much for us already. I had passed on job offers in other cities so Daniel wouldn't have to relocate. I had helped him through graduate school, covering bills when money was tight. And now, suddenly, I was the selfish one. I tried to push back. I invited Daniel to one of my office events, hoping he'd see how important my work was, how respected I was by my colleagues. He showed up late, looking uncomfortable, barely making eye contact with anyone. On the drive home, he muttered, "This isn't really my scene." It was clear. He didn't want to understand. He didn't care to understand. Then came the breaking point. One Saturday afternoon, I came home from running errands to find Daniel and his mother in our living room, deep in discussion. On the coffee table lay a resignation letter typed out, printed, waiting for my signature. My heart stopped as I read my own name on it. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling with fury. His mother smiled sweetly, as if she had done me a favor. "It's time, Laura. We thought it would be easier for you if the letter was already prepared. All you have to do is sign, and you can finally focus on what really matters, your family." I turned to Daniel, disbelief coursing through me. "You did this? You let her do this?" He avoided my eyes, his silence screaming louder than any confession. Something inside me snapped. I realized in that moment that I wasn't just fighting his parents. I was fighting him, too. And no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't keep erasing myself to fit into their mold. That night, while Daniel slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. My chest felt heavy, my stomach twisted, but beneath all that pain, a strange calm settled over me. I knew what I had to do. I would not sign their letter. Instead, I would start writing one of my own, my goodbye. The night I saw that resignation letter sitting on my coffee table was the night everything changed. I went to bed in silence, my body lying stiff beside Daniel. But my mind was already somewhere else. I wasn't thinking about how to explain myself to his parents anymore. I wasn't even thinking about how to convince Daniel to take my side. No, my thoughts were sharp and clear. I need to save myself before I disappear completely. The following morning, I slipped into my office early, pretending I needed to catch up on work. But the truth was, I couldn't stand being in that house. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, but my hands refused to type. Instead, I opened a blank document and started drafting a letter, one that had nothing to do with resignation from my job, but everything to do with reclaiming my life. It wasn't a goodbye to my career. It was the first outline of a goodbye to my marriage. That week, I began to notice just how suffocating things had become. Daniel's mother called almost every day, checking on my progress. She asked if I had told my boss yet, if I had set a date for starting a family. Each question was laced with expectation. Each silence from me was treated like rebellion. His father made his disapproval clear in harsher ways, sighing loudly if I mentioned a new project at work, muttering under his breath about modern women who don't know their place. And Daniel? He just stood there, caught between us, or maybe not caught at all. Maybe he had already chosen them, long before I realized it. At dinner, he would say things like, "Laura, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. My mom says kids grow up so fast, you'd only be out of work for a few years." He said it gently, as if he were offering me a compromise. But all I heard was betrayal. One evening, I came home from work to find Melissa, his mother, already inside my house. She had let herself in with a spare key Daniel had given her without asking me. She was in my kitchen, rearranging my cupboards as if she owned them. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She smiled, not even ashamed. "Oh, just making space for all the baby supplies you'll need soon. You'll thank me later." I wanted to scream, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I walked out, got into my car, and drove until the city lights faded behind me. I parked at a quiet overlook, gripping the steering wheel, sobbing into the silence. My chest ached with anger, grief, and exhaustion. I had built a life that was supposed to be mine, but somewhere along the way, it had been hijacked by people who didn't see me as Laura, the woman with ambitions and dreams. They only saw me as a vessel for their son's children. That night, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let them win. I wouldn't let them erase me. I started making quiet preparations. I opened a separate bank account, transferring small amounts of money from each paycheck so it wouldn't be noticed. I began reaching out to an old college friend who lived in another city, asking if she knew of any short-term rentals. I even started packing small things, books, important documents, keepsakes, and hiding them at the office, piece by piece, like a prisoner digging a tunnel out of her cell. But as I prepared, the pressure at home only grew. His mother found new ways to invade, showing up with nursery paint samples, bringing baby clothes as gifts. His father sat me down one night and said, "We've given you enough time. A woman who doesn't give her husband children is no wife at all." The cruelty in his words nearly knocked the air out of me. And Daniel, he let it all happen. He would look at me with pleading eyes, saying, "They just care about us, Laura. Why can't you see that?" But I did see. I saw clearly that I wasn't just losing a battle with his parents, I was losing my marriage, too. Late one night, as I sat at the office again, staring at the small box of belongings I had hidden away, I realized the truth. My marriage wasn't a partnership anymore. It was a cage, and I was almost ready to walk out of it for good. The weeks that followed felt like walking on a knife's edge. Every day I woke up in that house, surrounded by walls that no longer felt like home. And every day I reminded myself, I am leaving. I just need to be ready. But readiness doesn't come all at once. It builds in layers, fear, doubt, and then a spark of courage that won't die, no matter how hard life tries to snuff it out. The final straw came one Friday evening. I had just finished a brutal week at work, late nights, deadlines, endless meetings. I came home exhausted, dreaming of nothing more than a quiet shower and sleep. But when I walked through the door, my living room had been transformed into something unrecognizable. Cribs, baby clothes, diaper bags. His mother stood proudly in the middle of it all, smiling like she had just unveiled a masterpiece. "Surprise," she said, clapping her hands together. "We couldn't wait any longer, so we got you started. Look at all this, Laura. Isn't it wonderful?" My chest tightened as I scanned the room. My space, my sanctuary was gone, swallowed whole by their expectations. The couch I had picked out after months of saving was buried under stacks of pastel blankets. The coffee table where I used to spread out my work was now covered in pacifiers and baby bottles. Even the walls felt like they were closing in. Why would you do this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. His mother tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Because you're family. And family helps." You were taking too long to accept your role, so we decided to give you a little push." I turned to Daniel, who was standing by the doorway, his hands in his pockets, his eyes avoiding mine. "You let this happen?" He shifted uncomfortably, muttering, "They just want to help, Laura. Don't make a scene." Something inside me snapped. Don't make a scene. That's what I had been doing for months, swallowing my rage, biting my tongue, trying not to upset the fragile balance. But all that patience had led me here, to a living room stripped of my identity, a marriage stripped of respect. I exploded. "This is my home, Daniel. My life. And I am done letting your parents bulldoze through it like I don't exist." My voice echoed against the walls, and for once, no one dared to speak. His mother's smile faltered. His father narrowed his eyes in disapproval. And Daniel just stood there, silent, useless, weak. I stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door, and with shaking hands I dragged out a suitcase from the closet. My heart pounded as I began throwing clothes inside shirts, jeans, whatever I could grab. I didn't care about folding neatly or choosing carefully. I just needed out. Daniel followed me in, his voice panicked now. "Laura, stop. What are you doing?" I spun around, tears streaming down my face, fury burning in my chest. "I'm doing what I should have done months ago, leaving, because I will not sacrifice my dreams, my career, or my identity to be the woman your parents think I should be. If you can't stand up for me, if you can't stand with me, then there's nothing left to fight for." He reached for me, but I pulled away. His eyes were wet, his lips trembling, but still he said nothing. No apology, no promise, no defense, just silence. And that silence told me everything. I zipped the suitcase shut, my hands trembling, my heart shattering. I grabbed the box of documents I had hidden at the office earlier that week, slipped it into the bag, and stood tall. My knees wanted to buckle, my chest wanted to cave, but my soul had never felt clearer. I walked past his parents, who were still standing in the living room surrounded by their gifts. His mother's face twisted into disbelief. "You're really walking out, after everything we've done for you?" I stopped at the door, turned to face her, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I felt free. "You haven't done anything for me," I said, my voice steady. "You've only tried to erase me." But I refused to disappear. And with that, I pulled the door open, stepped into the night air, and let it close behind me. The cool breeze hit my face as I walked to the car, suitcase in hand. My heart was breaking, but beneath the pain, there was something else, a quiet, steady strength. For the first time in months, I felt like I was finally breathing. The first night after I left was the hardest. I drove aimlessly for hours with no real destination, my suitcase rattling in the trunk, tears blurring my vision. The city lights glowed in the distance like a reminder of all the possibilities out there, but all I felt was emptiness. I finally pulled into a small, cheap motel on the outskirts of town. The room smelled faintly of bleach and stale air, the sheets scratchy against my skin. But as I lay down, staring at the cracked ceiling, I realized something. For the first time in months, I wasn't being watched, judged, or pressured. I was alone, and even though it hurt, it also felt like freedom. The next morning, reality hit me. My phone buzzed nonstop with missed calls and messages, Daniel's name flashing again and again, followed by his mother's, then his father's. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Every time the screen lit up, my chest tightened. But I forced myself to let it ring. I knew if I picked up, they would try to drag me back, smother me with guilt, tell me I was ruining the family. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to hear their voices. At work, I tried to put on a brave face, but my coworkers noticed the exhaustion in my eyes. One of them, Jenna, pulled me aside during lunch. "Laura, are you okay? You've seemed different lately." For a moment, I thought about lying, brushing it off with some excuse. But something in her kindness broke the dam. I told her everything, the pressure from my in-laws, Daniel's silence, the night I finally packed my bags. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and when I finished, she reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Laura, you're stronger than you think. Don't let them make you doubt yourself." Her words stuck with me. stronger than you think. Still, the loneliness crept in at night. I missed the familiar warmth of my home, even if it had turned into a battleground. I missed the version of Daniel I thought I knew, the man who had once promised me partnership and respect. I found myself scrolling through old photos. Our wedding pictures, vacations, moments when we were truly happy. My heart ached with what could have been, what should have been, if only he had chosen me instead of them. But then I remembered the resignation letter, typed out and waiting for me to sign. I remembered the crib in my living room, the way his mother rearranged my cupboards without a second thought, the way his father called me selfish. I remembered Daniel's silence, always his silence. And that pain hardened into resolve. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I found a small apartment through a friend of a friend, barely big enough for me and my boxes, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture I chose myself, every item I placed with intention. It wasn't much, but it felt like a sanctuary compared to the suffocating house I had left behind. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, staying late not because I was avoiding home, but because I loved what I was doing. For the first time in months, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's expectations on my shoulders. My boss even noticed, pulling me into his office one afternoon. "Laura, your dedication hasn't gone unnoticed. We've got a leadership role opening soon. I think you'd be perfect for it." Tears nearly filled my eyes as I thanked him. Here I was, being recognized for the very thing my in-laws had called nonsense. Of course, Daniel didn't give up easily. He showed up at my office one evening, waiting by my car. His face looked tired, his eyes pleading. "Laura, please come home," he said softly. "We can fix this." I stood frozen, my heart torn in two. Part of me wanted to believe him, to run back and pretend none of it had happened. But another part, the stronger part, remembered every time he failed to defend me, every moment he chose silence over support. "Home," I whispered. "That house hasn't felt like home in a long time, Daniel. And you let that happen." His eyes dropped, and I saw the truth in his silence once again. He wanted me back, but not enough to change. Not enough to stand up to them. I walked past him, unlocked my car, and drove away. My chest heavy, but my spirit unbroken. That night, as I curled up in my tiny apartment, I realized something profound. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't trapped. I was building a new life, piece by piece, on my own terms. And no one, not Daniel, not his parents, could take that from me again. The more time I spent in my little apartment, the more I began to feel myself again. At first, it was strange waking up in a quiet space without Daniel's footsteps in the hallway or his parents barging in uninvited. But slowly, that silence became my peace. The walls weren't filled with judgment anymore, only with my own choices. And that was enough. The calls from Daniel kept coming, though less frequently now. His mother left voicemails filled with venom, saying things like, "You've disgraced our family, Laura. You'll regret this." His father's tone was colder, a mixture of anger and disappointment. "You'll never find happiness outside of family. You'll come crawling back." Each message used to pierce me like a knife, but after weeks of hearing them, something shifted. Their words no longer sounded powerful. They sounded pathetic. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel showed up again. I heard the knock at my door, heavy and hesitant. Against my better judgment, I opened it. He stood there, his shoulders slumped, a man caught between love and loyalty, but never able to choose. "Laura," he began, his voice cracking, "please, let's talk. I miss you. I miss us." I looked at him for a long time. His face was familiar, but it no longer felt like home. "What is it you miss, Daniel?" I asked softly. "Do you miss me? Or do you miss the version of me that kept quiet while your parents made every decision for us?" He swallowed hard, but said nothing. That silence again, the silence that had been killing me for years. I stepped aside, letting him into the apartment. He looked around, his eyes lingering on the small touches I had made plants on the windowsill. Books stacked neatly by the couch, my work laptop open on the desk. This was my life now, and he could see it. "Your parents," I said firmly, "have no place in our marriage. And you let them control everything. I begged you to stand with me, Daniel. I begged you to say something. Anything. And you never did. If I went back now, what would change?" He finally looked at me, his eyes glistening. I don't know. That was it. That was all I needed to hear. The man I once loved couldn't even imagine a future where I was allowed to be myself. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice my soul for his uncertainty. "I deserve someone who fights for me," I whispered. "Someone who doesn't sit in silence while I'm being torn apart. And if that's not you, then this," I gestured between us, the space that had grown wider every day, "is over." Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded faintly, as if deep down he knew this ending was inevitable. He walked toward the door, paused, and whispered, "I'm sorry." I closed the door behind him, leaning against it as tears streamed down my face. But this time, the tears weren't just of pain, they were of release. Of finally letting go of a marriage that had already ended long before I packed my bags. That night, I called my mother. I hadn't told her everything before, afraid of her judgment, but when I finally opened up, she listened quietly. And when I finished, she said the words I didn't even know I needed. "I'm proud of you, Laura. You chose yourself, and that's the bravest thing a woman can do." Her voice gave me strength. For so long I had felt guilty, selfish even, for walking away. But hearing her say those words reminded me that self-preservation is not selfishness. It is survival. At work, things blossomed. I poured myself into new projects, and when the leadership role finally opened, I applied without hesitation. Weeks later, when my boss announced that I had been promoted, the room erupted in applause. I stood there, tears brimming, realizing I had made it on my own, without anyone's permission but my own. That evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, a sense of calm washed over me. I thought about the woman I had been when I was married, quiet, silenced, drowning in expectations. And I thought about the woman I was becoming, fearless, independent, unashamed of my dreams. The past still hurt. Daniel's absence still lingered in the corners of my heart, but I was no longer defined by that pain. I was defined by the fact that I had walked through it and come out stronger. And I knew, with every fiber of my being, that there was no turning back. The weeks after Daniel walked out of my apartment for the last time were strange, quiet, heavy, but also full of a freedom I hadn't felt in years. I'd wake up in my small bedroom, the sunlight spilling across the floor, and for a moment, I would forget everything that had happened. Then the memories would return, the living room filled with baby cribs, the resignation letter typed without my consent, the silence that crushed me more than any words could. But instead of breaking me, those memories reminded me why I left. They reminded me that I had chosen myself, and that choice was worth everything. Life wasn't instantly perfect. There were nights I lay awake, my chest aching with loneliness, wondering if I had made the right decision. I missed the dream of what Daniel and I could have been, the life we had once imagined together, the love that I thought was unshakable. But every time doubt crept in, I forced myself to picture the reality, me disappearing piece by piece into a life built on someone else's expectations. That wasn't love. That was control dressed up as tradition. Slowly, my heart began to heal. I started saying yes to invitations I would have once declined. I joined a weekend hiking group, something Daniel always found a waste of time. I reconnected with old friends, laughing until my stomach hurt, remembering what it felt like to be seen for who I was and not who I was supposed to be. At work, I thrived. My promotion opened doors I had only dreamed of before. I led a team of brilliant people. My voice respected, my ideas valued. Each success felt like a quiet rebellion against the voices that had tried to convince me my career was nonsense. Each paycheck I deposited into my account felt like a promise kept to the woman who had once cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was strong enough to walk away. One afternoon, months later, I ran into Daniel by chance at a grocery store. He looked older, wearier, his smile faint but sad. We exchanged polite greetings, nothing more. And as I walked away, I realized something. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel longing either. I just felt peace. The chapter of my life that had once consumed me had truly ended. I went home that evening, sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, and let the sunset wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was living on my own terms. And I knew that no matter what the future held, whether I built a family someday, whether I stayed single, whether I kept climbing the ladder or started something entirely new, I would never again let anyone silence my voice. Because I had learned the hardest and most important lesson of my life: love without respect isn't love at all. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of my story. If there's one thing I hope you take away, it's this: never let anyone decide your worth for you. Your dreams, your career, your voice, they matter. And if you ever find yourself at a crossroads where you must choose between losing yourself or walking away, I hope you choose yourself, just like I did. If this story touched you, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, be brave, be true, and never apologize for choosing yourself.